The reason why I think I really love it is because it actually has this something that I would call the unholy trifecta of feels. Hello and welcome. It's me again. So today I am actually waiting for my rice to cook in the background. I just got back from work and I thought I have some free time and I could do this a little bit, just kind of talk about this book because I just finished it and I thought that it was amazing. I love it very much. This I think this can easily be one of the my favorite book this year. This is Certainty, and it's by Madeleine Thien. This book is actually a book that I chose for the 2020 Asian Readathon, and it's the third book that I finished for that particular readathon. That 3 out of 4. I actually chose this book because there was a prompt that says choose a book with characters or authors that you can relate to, and I just happened to have this book and I found out that there are characters from Borneo and I'm from Borneo, so I thought that was interesting, and really that was actually one of the reasons I was interested with this book, because it's not every day that you see people or characters from Borneo represented in books like this. And as it turned out, the portrayal of those characters in this book was actually really great, and I really enjoyed it. Another reason I actually chose this book was because of the title. I am kind of a sub for dramatic titles, and this book has an abstract noun as a title, certainty, and I certainly thought that that was super dramatic, and I literally just bought this book because of the title. Why I find myself gravitating towards these titles, I'm not exactly sure why, but there is something about abstract nouns that makes it seem larger than life. Like you have this title in here, and you look at this book, you don't know what the book is going to be about. Literally, because the title is just this, and it can be about anything. So it's like this really big, mysterious book that just with probably tons of treasures inside it, waiting for you for to discover. And I suddenly have that kind of feeling when I got this book. Looking at the title, I didn't know what it was about. It was so vague. And reading the synopsis, I wasn't so sure about what was going to happen in this book. Also, I wasn't so sure about what was the point, what was going to be the point of this book. So that really kind of made it more interesting. And as it turned out, later, when I actually finished this book, I enjoyed it so much. So this book actually has two parallel storylines. The first one is a storyline that takes place sometime in the modern time. I think it was in the 90s. Yeah, it was around the 90s, and it concerns the character of Ansel and his wife or his partner, I'm not sure. I can't remember. Gail. And Gail just died from pneumonia, I think. And this particular storyline just pretty much explores how Ansel deals with his grief, and also shows some of the flashback that happens sometime near before Gail passed away. Basically, before she passed away, she went to the Netherlands to find out about things. She was there for business purposes. She was doing some sort of the documentary, and so she met with her contacts there. But as it turned out later in the book, she also had another business going to the Netherlands, which kind of relates to her family. And the second storyline concerns the character of Matthew, who is actually Gail's father. Matthew actually came from British North Borneo in a town called Sandakan, and that at that time, when he was spending his childhood in Sandakan, it was actually occupied by the Japanese forces, and it was there that he was friends with this girl called Annie, and he had some memories there, good memories, bad memories, especially involving his family and his father's death. So basically, there were a lot of memories for him there. So Matthew's family, especially his father was actually a collaborator for the Japanese, and when the Japanese surrendered, his father was actually killed by the Japanese soldiers, and because his father was someone who worked with the Japanese, they actually had some sort of a bad reputation in that town, and therefore could not exactly stick around in Sandakan. So he and his mother fled to a different town. Then he moved to Australia. A few years later, he came back to Sandakan, and then he met with Annie again, just talk about things, and they kind of revealed their feelings towards each other, but because of the things that happened with his family back when the Japanese were still around, and the reputation that his family had in that town, he just literally could not stick around. But he didn't really care about that. But his friend Annie actually cared about that, so Annie made the decision that kind of pushed themselves apart, just made them separate so that Matthew did not have to stay in Sandakan. So when you hear about this, you can actually see there are two storylines that are very far from each other in terms of time, characters, setting, places. They can't be any more different from each other. And while I was reading this book at the beginning, I was seeing these two different storylines going parallel with each other. I was actually expecting these two storylines to converge somewhere in the middle or somewhere at the end, and yeah, it turned out it did. And I thought that the convergence of these two storylines was really beautiful. I thought it was really nicely done. Basically, these two storylines are each of them are love stories on its own. The more modern storyline, the one that takes place in the 90s, concerns the love story between Ansel and Gail, and the other one mostly concerns with the love story of Matthew and Annie, and also later Matthew's wife Clara, Gail's mother. And I thought that all of these storylines, they just kind of converged with each other to form one single stream of story. I thought that was made very beautifully, and I really enjoyed that. Just seeing all of these plot points, all of the events just merged into something that totally makes sense in the end. I thought that that was wonderful. All of these characters, they seem to be quite distant from each other, but as it turns out, they're all related in some way or another, and I thought that was really nice. See, reading this book, because it was so nicely written, and as usual with books that are enjoyable and nice, I can't help but to have additional thoughts about the subjects or the themes that are being explored in this book. And usually I don't really approach those things in very academic way, or I usually have really casual thoughts about this. And with this book, the reason why I think I really love it is because it actually has this something that I would call the unholy trifecta of feels. Basically, it has love, it has loss, and it has grief. Literally, if you have these three things, and if you can write the story well, and I'm pretty sure that you are going to be, that book is going to be my favorite book, because that's kind of an easy way to lure me into the book. The main thing in this book that I found was really poignant is the exploration of loss and memory, and it just makes you feel kind of sad when you think about all of these things. I think these kind of experience, losing something or losing someone, and thinking about it is something that a lot of people experience. When you lose something, when you lose someone, Sometimes you just have a lot of questions. You know, it can be questions of what could have happened, um, you know, what you could have done to prevent something, or you know, there are a lot of what ifs, and there are questions concerning you know, what will happen in the future, how will you move on from the loss. You know, all of these questions, they will start to pop out when you experience some sort of a loss. And when that happens, you know, with all those questions, you have a lot of uncertainty. And it's the uncertainty that would literally drive you to do things in order to get some answers for, you know, the questions that you have, you know, because you hope that when you have the answers for those questions, then maybe you'll be able to get some sort of emotional closure, or you know, you'll be able to put an end to that grief or whatever thing that you are feeling. But you know, I think a lot of people would agree with this. Just because you go out and look for the answer and make sure that the uncertainty feels like a certainty, it may not necessarily change your feeling. You might still be sad, you might still be grieving, and it might even open up more questions for you. So it feels like, you know, the quest to search for certainty is not exactly something that is you know, it's not a surefire way to move on from grief. And I thought that that was beautifully portrayed in this book, and I just enjoyed seeing how that concept happens to different characters in this book, especially the character of Matthew, who is pretty much, you know, someone who is alive in this entire novel, and he has experienced so much loss. It totally makes sense that he would have a lot of uncertainty in his life. You know, he has a lot of doubts how to move on from different kinds of losses that he experienced. So yeah, a lot of crap has happened to this character, and he has been doing things with the hopes of trying to escape from that grief, or maybe trying to reduce it a little bit. You know, he has been moving to different places, you know, going to Canada, for example. Hopefully by escaping his childhood home, he would be able to start over a new life and, you know, all those things. But as it turned out, it didn't really work that well for him. And I guess you could kind of relate that to a lot of real life instances, you know, your own experiences, my own experience. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people out there would have this kind of, you know, experience of trying to find answers in, you know, something in their life, but they just, you know, maybe they could find it, but it really doesn't help with anything. At first glance, this book would probably look like it doesn't really have a point to it. If you are more focused on plot-driven story, then it probably won't interest you that much, because it's really just about the characters. What I really love about this is that it was able to translate a really abstract concept, you know, certainty versus uncertainty, especially when it comes to feelings, and, you know, made it more tangible, made it something that you could see, you could experience, you could feel. And I thought that it was masterfully done, and it was awesome, so I gave it 5 stars. So that's it for this book. Certainty is an awesome book. If you want to read it, then I seriously recommend everyone to read this book, because it was just nice. So I'll see you again in another video, and until then, take care and bye bye. And I think that my rice has just finished, you know, cooking, so I'm gonna have my dinner now.